My entitled mother demanded I hand over my house to her because my little sister is pregnant and needs it more than me. I, 31 male, have a sister, 28 female, that has honestly been the golden child to my mother, but not my father for as long as I can remember. My parents divorced when I was a teenager because my mother cheated with an old high school ex-boyfriend and has always been controlling, manipulative, and narcissistic. Sadly, my little sister was like her little mini-me. Our mother also seemed to believe she had total authority over me anytime she so much as snapped her fingers. She'd snap them and order me around like a dog. It was the meaning. And my sister always backed her up too. No surprise. I went to live with my dad full-time after our parents split. While my sister stayed with mom, the two of them were very alike, and both pretty much stopped speaking with my father unless it was about money. Though I'm more like my dad, my father was very business-oriented and started teaching me how to do his line of work. As soon as I was 16, I got pretty good at it, and after 12 years of working for my father, I was made a partner in his company. Things were great, but then about 8 months ago, tragedy struck. My father had become somewhat immune-compromised due to being a heavy smoker for much of his life and died at only 60 years old. After he caught COVID-19, I met my mother and sister for the first time in years after we had a socially distant funeral for my father over a video call. My father was cremated at his own request and buried in a local cemetery. There was nobody or casket. My sister seemed to grieve, but my mother looked indifferent the entire time, though I honestly was not surprised. The last time she saw my father, she screamed at him that he owed her more money and then threatened to sue him, to which he just laughed at her. He'd paid alimony and child support as long as he was legally mandated to, and no more than that. He even put $30,000 towards my sister's college fund. But 10 years after the divorce, he was no longer legally required to send mom money anymore because of the judge's ruling. She's by no means broke. She works the same job she has had for nearly 3 decades, fully owns the old family home we used to share, and even rent out 2 of the rooms in it to Airbnb regularly. She's by no means hurting for money. Sometime after the funeral, my dad's will was read. Apparently he figured that if his heavy smoking didn't eventually do him, something else would, and even joked about it in a pre-recorded video. I was pretty much willed nearly all of his assets from most of his money to his business and home. He left my sister a car, 2015 Nissan Altima, and about $10,000 in cash. My mother only got $1,000 and a few other items that she had been claiming were rightfully hers since the divorce. Beyond that, I got the rest. And my girlfriend now lives with me in the house my father passed down to me. My sister pretty much went from finishing 2 years of community college to living off her boyfriend and only working part-time online for several years. During that time, she got pregnant but suffered a traumatic miscarriage. I wasn't aware till after the funeral because we were practically no contact and no one else told me. When lockdown hit, her boyfriend's job started downsizing little by little, and eventually he was only able to stay on part-time, which hampered hers and his finances to the point he was finally telling her she needed to look for better employment as well, since he was trying to find a second job. And then she got pregnant. She claims they were careful but calls it her miracle baby. One evening I got an unexpected knock at my door, and when I answered, I was unpleasantly greeted by both my mother and sister. They both walked right in without even asking and made themselves comfortable in my living room. My girlfriend and I shared a look of confusion, and I asked why they'd come by. My sister was giggling and looking all over, opening doors and seemingly giving herself a tour of my home. My mother had just plopped herself down on my sofa and snapped her fingers while demanding cold bottled water. My girlfriend got the water for her, and I asked what they were here for. My sister seemed all giddy and just ignored me to continue snooping around my home, and before long I heard her yell from down the hall, "Mummy, it's perfect." She still calls her mummy. My mother finally spoke up and said, "I think it's time you did your brotherly duty," to which I was like, what? My mother then proceeded to say, "Now that your father has passed, this house should have gone to me since I was his only spouse. But you can still fix this. You make plenty of money and could just buy a new house. Your sister needs this one so much more since she's the one with a baby on the way. If you are so determined on staying, you could just keep to one room and cover all of the bills until you decide to move out." My girlfriend and I read it to know exactly where this is going and how it'd play out if I let it go on. I guess you could say we were mentally prepared. I took a deep breath and stated aloud, "That's not everything happening. You don't order me around, especially not in my own damn house. Yes, I make plenty of money, but like Dad, I'm gonna save it for when I really need it, not that you care." My mother started snapping her fingers at me like she used to, and loudly stated, "Stop. I am your mother, and you will do as I say, because I brought you into this world. I'm the only one in charge here. As far as you're concerned, I am God. That means when I say jump, you say how high this house is rightfully mine and your sister will live here. Consider this your formal eviction, But since I'm gracious, I'll give you 2 weeks to pack your bags and transfer the deed to me. In the back of my mind I'm thinking this can't be real, but then I just grabbed my cell phone and started dialing. My mother quickly stood up and yelled, "What are you doing?" And I retorted, "I'm doing what I should have done. As soon as this crap started, I'm calling the cops to get you out of my effing house." She started swiping at me and managed to knock my phone out of my hands. She then proceeded to try and stomp on it, but I was quick enough to snatch it up before she could. "That's effing it. If you don't leave, I will force you out myself." My mother proceeded to slap me across the face, and I returned the favor twice as hard backhanded. So I ended up knocking her back down onto the couch. She held her hand over her retaining and smeared makeup face in total shock, and then yelled, "How dare you!" I went back to dial my phone and said that if she didn't leave, I would have the police come and remove her by force. My sister came barreling in between us, holding her arms out and saying that I should just do the right thing for once in my life and be a good big brother. I snapped and said, "Really, I'm the bad sibling. Last I checked, I was the one who's had to work for a living. Since I was a teenager, I had to do all the chores in the house while you just sat on your ass playing video games or talking with your friends all day. And you used to steal my hard-earned money just to go out shopping after you spent all of your allowance. You're a complete mooch and thief, so I don't owe you crap. Now both of you get out before I decide to dial this last number." My sister started to tear up, crying like a baby, and said, "Mommy, make him stop." My mother began hugging her and kissing her cheeks while giving me a death glare. Then she seemed to think she'd gotten smart and said, "If you call the police, I can just tell them that you hit me, and who knows, I could maybe say to everyone, you wanted to do a lot worse to a poor pregnant girl in need. I don't think that would be a very good thing for a year." I cut her off with a raised hand and said, "Just stop. If you haven't noticed, my girlfriend over there has had her phone out recording almost this whole time. That means we have recorded evidence of you assaulting me first and openly stating you'd lie to the police. I don't think that'd be so good for your reputation at your job or your little Airbnb. If looks could kill, my mother would have blown me up like a tactical nuke." But she quickly deflated and started dragging my crying sister out by the arm. My sister was somehow acting like a complete toddler and broke loose of our mother's grip to sit down on my porch step and have a tantrum. I just gave my mother a look and said, "Do you see now, this is the result of the spoiled way you raised her?" She glared at me again, and then I was treated to a show of my mother trying to drag my sister up my porch steps. But she latched onto the porch handrails and kept saying, "You promised me," over and over again. I let out a cackle and told them both from the door to never come back. My mother flipped me the bird and then went back to trying to drag my sister off the porch. It took a few minutes, but she finally got my sister to get up and leave with her by saying, I'm a cruel, heartless bastard who will go to hell for this." I left some more and said that there's also a special place in hell for liars and narcissists who try to manipulate others to get their way. My mother clenched her fists and was about to say more when I just held up my smartphone again with its recording and said, "The clock is ticking. Mom, get off my property." My mother then walked my sister to the car, gave me one last snooty look and drove off. I thought that was the end of it. But letting things go was never something my mother would do. After a few days I started getting messages from people I know and some relatives online. A lot of them were furious with me, but others just had questions about what was going on. I tried to check my Facebook but couldn't see anything they were saying, because my sister and mother had blocked me on their social media. My girlfriend could still see everything because they kept their profile set to open. We screenshotted everything and then printed some of it out. Both of their profiles had posts that called me a greedy, heartless bastard who stole the house that was meant to be my sister's inheritance right out from under her by paying off the lawyer who handled Dad's will, which is a complete and utter lie, and they both know it. I called my lawyer, who was also my father's lawyer and a trusted family friend, and gave him copies of all the screenshots from Facebook and the video my girlfriend had recorded the day my mother demanded my house. He wanted to just write a formal cease and desist, but I wanted to take it further than that, and he sent them a letter. I told him to write via express mail that had to be signed for. I know they got it. My mother called me in absolute fury the same day the letter was delivered. I told her that if she and my sister didn't redact all of the untrue social media posts they made about me and tell the absolute truth. I sent all of the information I have to the whole family, her boss, and look the videos we recorded of her online. I'd sue her on top of it. She called me unreasonable and that she just did what she did for my sister's sake, and then went into a full-blown lecture, reiterating her belief that my sister still needs my house more than me. I bluntly stated I didn't care what she thought, and if she didn't reject everything and tell the truth, I'd make sure her career would be over. She begrudgingly said, "Fine, you win, have a year away and keep the effing house," before hanging up the phone. That very evening, all of the Lion posts disappeared from both their profiles. I was unlocked. My mother gave me and everyone else one half-assed apology claiming she jumped the gun with everything she said, because she thought my sister needed my house more than me because she was broken and prey. But the house was rightfully mine according to my father's will, and she knew that even before my father passed away, she had no right to try and claim it. As for my sister, she also apologized, but more or less just pirated everything. Our mother said while claiming she just went along with her ideas. She blamed what she did all on our mother and her pregnancy hormones. The replies poured in for some time on both my mother and sister's profile. Many were furious with them for trying to take my house. I got a lot of messages of stories in my bags from those who had previously believed her, but all it really did was show me who was more on her side to begin with, since they were all believing her nonsense so quickly. They were mostly people from her side of the family. Anyway, no one on my father's side believed her at all and openly said so. My sister and her boyfriend ended up moving in with our mother to save money, but she put them in the basement to keep her Airbnb running. My sister started crying on social media that she can't live upstairs. I'm pretty sure that two of them were fighting with each other because all my sister did after that is complain online. My mother barely posted anything on her social media anymore because of the previous stunt she tried. Wolf Op, that is one hell of a ride, and that's just the first half. Yikes, your mom is one hell of a nutcase and she really got her claws dug in deep in your sister. I don't know if your sister's just like your mom, but she definitely acts like her. Anyways, how about we just move on to part 2 and see how this story continued and ended. The whole incident inspired me to get cameras for my house inside and outside. My dad was old school. He didn't care for cameras at home, hell. He didn't even care for TV saved for the occasional movie. He mostly enjoyed his scotch with a cigarette and a good book. Now I owned this house and cameras were a very needed upgrade. And just in case, my girlfriend and I didn't tell anybody outside of our close friend circles about them. Those that do know were sworn to secrecy and kept their word. A couple of weeks had gone by without any word from my mother or sister other than what I was seeing on my sister's social media. She was constantly complaining about having to live in our mother's basement. And I'm pretty sure she was making our mother miserable for it. But what came next surprised me. I got a frantic call from my sister saying that her boyfriend was questioning whether or not he was the father of her pregnancy, and he was threatening to leave without a paternity test. My sister swore up and down to me that she's always been faithful to him. I admit, I believe there was a chance she could be lying, because our mother's own past affair made our father question our paternity as well. I suggested they get a test, but my sister just babbled about how they don't have a lot of money. I offered to pay for it so long as she didn't come to me asking for money or favors. Often she quickly agreed. I arranged for the test and even shelled out extra to make sure we got the test results as soon as possible, but it would take a few days. I hadn't yet met my sister's fiancé, but when I did I started to understand a bit more. He's half Hispanic. And my mother, though not open about it, is quite the closet racist, something she got from my grandparents. Sadly, I decided to try and talk to the guy and took him out for a beer. While at the pub he spilled his guts to me. He said that my mother had been whispering in his ear about how my sister is just like her, and she cheated before. So my sister might have as well. This made him have doubts that grew every day, and he said he wasn't sure my sister didn't cheat or get pregnant on purpose to try and baby trap him. So she won't have to work any more than she already does with her little part-time online sales job. Sadly, I knew he was probably right about the latter. But other than that, he's described her as a completely different person when she's not around our mother. Ever since they've been living in mom's basement, she's become more and more like a child. After what I saw at my house, I wholeheartedly believe him, so I asked if he suggested she get therapy. He admitted he's wanted to, but didn't have the money, and had been walking on eggshells around her and our mother for a while. He never talked about it. I guess that made some brotherly instincts. I didn't know. I still had kicked in because I started to realize if I was going to have a niece or nephew, I couldn't let them live with or be raised by my mother. Pay my sister so I did the only thing I could think to do. I told him that if the DNA results came back positive, I'd offer him a job and training at the company I now own. He quickly agreed because he doesn't want to live with my mother any more than he has to. The day of the DNA test results coming in the mail came pretty fast. My sister called me saying they weren't in the mail she'd gotten that day. I asked who got the mail from the P.O. box and she answered, it was our mother. That pretty much confirmed my theory. She was trying to force out my sister's boyfriend. Since I don't, and never really have trusted my mother with my sister's consent, I preemptively got the clinic to send a copy of the DNA results to my address as well. They did come in the mail that same day. I called our mother and asked if she'd taken the DNA test results. The following conversation is more or less what I recall since it wasn't recorded. Hello, Mom. I heard that sister's DNA test didn't come in the mail today. Yes, but it could be here soon. Did you take it? I know it arrived today as I paid to have it sent as priority mail. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I would never. Okay, then I guess I'll just bring over the backup copy that was sent to me. But the backup copy? Yeah, I had one sent to me as well on the same day since I paid for it. Sister gave me her and everything. I guess I'll just call her and then we'll meet up. Wait, that's not NetClick. I hung up the phone and called my sister right away. I picked up my sister and her boyfriend from my mother's house and drove to a local diner restaurant. There we opened the envelope together. Sure enough, the test results were positive. My sister's boyfriend was so happy that he actually asked her if she'd want to marry him. She said, yes. Like half a dozen times, the little vindictive part of me was just waiting to see my mother's face when she got the news. But what happened next honestly shocked me. When I took my sister back home, hers and her boyfriend's stuff was in the process of being put out onto the lawn by a few men we didn't recognize. My sister froze with a look on her face that I'd never seen before. Our mother came huffing outside in a rage while holding the DNA test results she claimed never arrived and began verbally tearing into my sister. How could you make a baby with that racial slur? I thought your dating him was just a stupid face, but now you're gonna have his baby and marry him. I would have been sort of with having his little bastard around if you weren't raising it in my home. And Rachel Slur wasn't around anymore, said while pointing at sister's boyfriend. But mommy. I know buts, young lady. I demand you abort that little word I do not want to use from your belly right now, or leave my house at once. Then she turned to me while snapping her fingers and said, and I hope you're proud of yourself. I tried to make this family normal, but you wouldn't do as I say. As a good son should. Now all my plans are ruined. You're all a bunch of racial slurs. Meanwhile, my sister was on her knees in the grass and holding her belly crying. I can't. My mother then actually grabbed my sister's hair and was poised ready to take a swing at her. But one good glare from me and she froze in place and then rigidly lowered her arm. She just let out a loud growl and stormed back into her house screaming, "She's your problem. Now Oppie, I no longer have any children." That night, I put up my sister and her boyfriend in a hotel till a friend of my lawyer that works in real estate helped arrange an apartment for them as soon as possible. Like I promised, I gave my sister's boyfriend a job. He's new and pretty much starting at the bottom rung, but he's a quick learner. It'll take a while, but I'll get him in a good position. He's very happy to work for me. My sister is now in therapy, paid for by my company's insurance, and has already started to act more mature than I've ever seen her. She stopped referring to our mother as mommy and has even started talking about her the way I do. She came to me recently and said she's working harder now and told me I was right about her being a spoiled mooch. She's gonna work hard to be a good mother and provider for her child. Her therapist seems to really be doing a great job. The level of regret my sister has now is pretty extreme. She's admitted to me in tears that she regrets beyond measure, not apologizing to our father while he was still alive. I've got a few more stories to post to show why. I've understood for most of my life my sister was the victim of our mother's narcissism, with the way she treated me. When we were kids, I grew resentful and stopped trying to help her with anything. But now that we're both adults and she's away from our mother for good, I can finally help her grow into a better person. I already really liked my future brother-in-law. He's hung out with me a few times since coming to work for me. He also speaks fluent Spanish, and that has helped a few times already with some customers. He is a great employee. As for my mother, she actually drove up to my house in broad daylight when no one was home, and broke several of my front windows with large rocks she had in a metal bucket. The rocks had racial slurs written all over them, but thanks to those cameras I put in, she was caught pretty easily. I had the footage in police hands that same day. I didn't bother to ask for repayment for the damages she caused. The windows were old anyways, and it just gave me an excuse to remodel. I have pressed charges and even got a restraining order. She is not allowed within 500 feet of me or my property. She also took quite the downfall online, as I had a dash cam in my car that picked up everything my mother said and did that evening. She kicked my sister out. This time I did show it to the rest of the family, and my sister also told pretty much the same story on her Facebook that pretty much destroyed my mother's remaining image of her side of the family. So she's not really speaking much to any of them anymore. My mother was never very good at planning. She had some grand idea that if my sister had a house to herself, then she would need her baby's father around and she could survive working part-time. I pretty much shattered that dream. She didn't lose her job or anything because I didn't go that far. She's not set to retire for another decade, but some of her more patty relatives started submitting fake bad reviews for her Airbnb. Now she's probably losing customers. She's a manipulative narcissist, which is why I never let down my guard when she's involved. She used to know that better, but after years of no contact after she and my dad divorced, I guess she somehow forgot. When she slapped me, it was the first time she laid a finger on me since I was 14 back. Then I stood up to her and she threw a tantrum because neither I nor my father let her thank me anymore. She's someone who can't seem to live without control of others. She pretty much has no one to boss around. My mother has gotten what she deserved though. I wonder if it's really over or if she's gonna try something again. I've got a mole on the inside, so to speak, with a cousin from my mother's side of the family. She's one of the few relatives to still visit my mother. And last she checked a little while ago, my mom's pretty depressed and looks like a shell of her former self. Now, I really feel no guilt for that. I'm fully prepared if she decides to try and do something to make herself so pitiful that the rest of the family starts having sympathy for her. I sure won't care what she does, and my sister probably won't either. My mother made her metaphorical bed with dirty sheets. Now she can lie in her own. There you go. That's Op's story regarding his narcissistic mother. It was a ride, and OP's hands did not tremble at any moment. I think that's fantastic. Congratulations, OPOP, thanks for sharing. Hopefully your mom learned a lesson and will stay out of your way from now on. All that there's left to say is I wish you and your girlfriend, your sister and her fiancé, and the child that's coming all the best in the future. Take care of he. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I certainly did reading them to you. So if you did, then go ahead and give the video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and become a member of our Discord community that just keeps growing. And it is fantastic. Like I said in the beginning of the video, all of the relevant links are in the video description below, so be sure to check them out. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys enjoy this content. So thank you once again. And having said all that, I will see you guys in the next video.